Hey guys, Ron from wildbettafishusa. Let's talk about betta rutilans, also known as betta wajok. Depending on the location, the name is pretty much, as far as I've been told, uh, interchangeable between the single fish. This species is in the betta coccina complex and typically has a reddish green type coloration. Females are slightly grayish red with some green hues, and males typically, especially adult males, typically throw a lot of really rich maroon type colors. They're also known for having extremely vibrant eyes when showing aggression towards one another, um, otherwise known as laser eyes in the hobby. Betta wajok, in my opinion, is a very versatile fish. And in some setups I've had where there weren't a whole lot of surface plants and locations to build bubble nests, these fish have the ability to actually switch over to mouth brooding. Now, I have a clay jar that I use to position up in the top corner. It's a method I've used plenty of times for betta hendra, and I also use it for betta wajok. Now, in this particular instance, the male will go in, of course, and he'll build a bubble nest inside the clay pot that I position a little bit off to the side so it's out of the water flow. I usually put some moss on top of the clay pot, as you can see right there. The pot itself has a little gap of air inside where the bubble nest can be built rather easily and can be maintained securely inside the pot. I usually use suction cups to hold the pot to the side of the glass. And in this case, I'm using a piece of driftwood right there to actually position it so it doesn't fall down. These guys have been feeding rather heavily on bloodworms and blackworms. Now, bloodworms are not something I would feed too often unless I'm out of blackworms. Now, today I've been really low on blackworms, so I decided to give them some bloodworms just to change things up a little bit. These guys typically like food that is live. They're not always known for taking dead food, as far as like say dry tubifex worms. They will pick on it if hungry, but they prefer live food. In my setups, I'm not really able to get these guys to take pellet food, and these are third generation captive bred in our setups. The original wild caught pairs I brought in years ago, I think close to about 3 or 4 years ago. Those fish only ate only ate live food. Wild caught fish are known for that, especially the bettas in a coccina complex can be a little difficult sometimes to switch over to dry foods and non-modal type foods. But for the most part, bloodworms, blackworms are probably the best option. I usually keep blackworms all the time, and I have a blackworm keeper, and it maintains them freshly. And typically it will spurt a lot of bettas that will not breed regularly for you. Blackworms are always a go-to source to get them to actually spawn. They're high in fats, obviously, because they're worms. Rich in proteins, obviously, because they're an insect type, let's say invertebrate type food. So they're going to be typically high in fats and proteins, and that's exactly what you're going to need for these fish to be able to build a bubble nest. Take a couple days, maybe 2 or 3 days where they're not going to feed, court, produce eggs for females. You're going to need those protein-rich fatty foods, and worms of some sort are great for that. I've never used live tubifex. I would love to be able to get tubifex worms that are live, but in our area, they're not readily available. I know some sources in New York that live by them, love them, and are able to get them in some of their local shops. But we're not able to find tubifex worms in any of our local shops anymore. Those old school fish shops are, as you know, pretty much going to the wayside. So for the most part, white worms are another great option. Grindle worms are another great option. But so far, I'm able to maintain blackworms rather easily, especially with the new black worm keeper I use. It's easy to change the water on them every other day, and these fish love them. Wajok / rutilans. Well, let's stick with just the name rutilans right now. It's a very, very versatile wild betta, as I mentioned prior. Males typically are less than 2 inches, maybe a little bit more than 2 inches long. They're not known for being overly aggressive. There's a group in this tank, and this is a 15-gallon tank. There's probably about 9 fish in this tank. Females are kept rather busy between the males, and they spawn often in this setup. I'm able to also maintain the fry in this setup. They're not known for picking off their fry, not like Betta chinoides and albi marginata, which are extremely predatory on their fry, and even on other fry from other fish. I've had rutilans in this setup grow out for years. I've had them grow out in 5.5-gallon tanks with lots of plants, and I've been able to actually grow the fry out right next to the actual wild pair, the adults themselves. So if you're lucky enough to get them to spawn, you don't have to really net out the fry too often. Just let them grow in as long as you can get them fed, and they will readily take microworms and baby brine shrimp, as will the adults. The adults will feed on baby brine shrimp also. So this is a quick breeding setup that I like to use for the coccina complex. So any of the fish in the coccina complex will appreciate this type of setup, and this is my setup for breeding wild betta rutilans. Thanks guys. Wild Betta Fish USA. Please subscribe. See you.